So we jump to the intelligent part and to the nasty part. What errors are we making when we do all this stuff? But that's also, as I emphasized, what makes us intelligent here. At least we try to be. It can be difficult, because maybe all our models don't really necessarily represent the real world that we meet. But hey, we try. Two kinds of errors can occur when we do this exercise of hypothesis testing. Now, when we talk about errors, you should think about a guy who do repeatedly hypothesis testing, a guy like me who helps many different people from many different companies and scientific institutions in performing their hypothesis tests for making various decisions in science, society, and business. Many decisions are made based on the help I give to people. I should think about what kind of errors am I making people do. Heavy thinking, but we have to. 2 ways to be wrong here, and 2 ways to be, did I bring the table? No, yeah, here it is. I like this table, maybe I should have brought it up. Then I'll jump back. There are 2 possible truths and 2 possible decisions if we split it into a binary way to consider the world. Either the null is true or the null is false, right? We can say it as simple as that. That's the real life, the real truth out there. Either it's true or it's false. Then I have 2 things, I have 2 possible choices to make. Either I reject or I accept. Here I couldn't make myself write accept, so I just wrote fail to reject. But that is what I also call accept. Then, when the null is false, I'm happy. I've done the right thing, right? When the null is true and I accept, I've also done the right thing. But that's focusing on the good part of life. Now let's just it's not easy for me, but let's focus on the bad sides a little bit. There is a risk that I may reject the null in a case where I shouldn't have done it, right? Maybe I should have accepted it. Maybe it's true. Maybe I sometimes reject a true null. Maybe I sometimes claim that A is better than B, even though it is not. Maybe sometimes I should have rejected the null, but I missed it. Right? I didn't make myself able to prove anything, so I just accepted the null. These are the 2 errors we make. They are actually globally called type 1 and type 2 errors. It's not just a name used in this table. It's within the statistical terminology, at least, right? This is the classical type 1 and type 2 error related to hypothesis testing and decision making. I promised you to go back to this slide. We give a name to those 2 risks of making those errors. We call them alpha and beta, funny enough. Again, global names, not just my names. Global names out there. And the alpha is the one we know, actually. That's the one we control. We control the probability of rejecting something we shouldn't have. That's the alpha level. Court of law analogy. You're accused in a court of law. If we should talk about hypothesis testing there, the null would be you're not guilty. That's the starting point. You would have to prove to a man to be guilty. Here there is this point again. Just because we didn't manage to prove a guy guilty doesn't mean we have proved him innocent. Right? By definition, you're innocent, but you haven't necessarily been proved to be. We should be careful about using the acceptance, the lack of rejections is in itself at least not a proof of anything. Because how can we make sure that we don't reject anything? I can just make an experiment with 1 or 2 people. With 1 or 2 people, I wouldn't be able to reject anything. I wouldn't be able to prove anything. But have I proved anything else? No, I've proved nothing. So in itself, an acceptance is nothing. This is my slide with the table. I told you this already. Here it is put as a theorem. This alpha, our critical level that we usually put at 5%, sometimes maybe it's put at 1% or 1 per mil. These are the 3 classical choices for this risk level, because it is the risk level. That's basically what I claim here. When we put a limit to our hypothesis testing procedure like this, it means that our long-term risk of making a type 1 error, wrongly stating that we have found something in cases where there wasn't anything to find, we do that in 5% of the times we perform an experiment. If I use the 5% limit, that's in a way the definition of the limit, because we say, hey, if I'm unlikely far away, then I reject. But how often will I be 5% unlikely far away? Well, in 5% of the cases. If I performed 100 experiments with having plants listening to Mozart and Bach, for instance, and testing the difference in the growth of plants, one group of plants listening to Mozart, another group of plants listening to Bach, and I spent a few millions on this experiment. I did this experiment 20 times. 100 times, sorry, I said. Many millions. How many times would I find a significant difference in average growth between plants listening to Bach and listening to Mozart? Well, in 5 out of those 100 experiments, I would find that. That's the downside of this. That's the open-minded risk that we face. 5% of the times where there's nothing to find, we claim that we found something. That's why we sometimes also like meta-analysis, right? It's for some points, for some things, it's a pretty high risk. For other things, it's an acceptable risk.